A couple of years ago, I didn't get role-playing games. I didn't understand who they were for. On one hand, RPGs often associate themselves with geek culture. Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, and the like feature huge fantasy worlds with classic archetypes like wizards and elves, dragons and orcs, and everything in between. Obviously, as someone who paints miniatures and loves fantasy and sci-fi alike, I feel like I tick the first box of what I thought was a stepping stone into RPGs. I could even paint minis for my role-playing games. The G in RPG stands for game, and I love playing games, both virtual and physical. I've done that my whole life, so put a big tick in box number 2. The last box to tick from an outside perspective was a little stranger, however. The majority player experience for an RPG seems like some kind of acting. You're playing as a character that is not you, in a setting that you don't live in, mostly. That was a little confusing to me. At first glance, that kind of feature seems like it would attract actors, and in my brain, the Venn diagram of actors, geeks, and people who are into gaming definitely has some crossover, but not enough to support how wildly popular RPGs are in my head. Compound that with the fact that Critical Role, a massively popular online role-playing group, is made up of entirely actors, and the idea that you need some acting chops doesn't seem so far-fetched for the newbie. So what's the catch? Why are RPGs so widespread? It's not just D&D, there are so many sets of RPG rules, and it's honestly staggering. My curiosity was piqued, and I had to know what I was missing out on. A couple of years ago, in my mid-20s, I tried D&D for the first time with a group of few others in a similar boat. We studied the absolute tome of rules that is the player manual and made our characters. I made a wood elf monk trying to recreate a war dancer from Warhammer Fantasy in the D&D world, of course. I even named him Daith because I knew no one at the table knew Warhammer wood elf lore, and that name is awesome. We set out on an adventure and we stopped playing after 3 or 4 sessions. It wasn't an amazing experience. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't awful, but the whole wasn't greater than some of its parts. I would have rather just been playing a fantasy board game or painting miniatures for fun. I also struggled to separate my character from myself as far as decision-making went. I had a hard time acting seriously when there were genuinely dire moments, and my friends did as well. It obviously doesn't need to always be serious, but some contrasting moments are important. So I shelved RPGs for a while. I picked it back up again with a one-shot or two, shorter experiences that require less investment, and I still wasn't having as much fun as I thought others were having. I know they're wildly popular. I know they wouldn't be popular if people weren't voting with their dollars to support this industry. Millions of people are having fun, so why am I not? Up until this point, I was simply buying RPG books because they're so beautiful to look at and filled with art of worlds that I found inspiring, but they were never used. Simply coffee table books. At this point, I needed to solve it. I wanted to figure out what was preventing me from enjoying them to the fullest. Was it the awkwardness of acting like someone else in front of my friends? Was it the crushing weight of the rules that are often found in these games? Like I said previously, I've played games my entire life. The objective of most games, to me, in its simplest form, is to leverage the rule set more effectively than your opponents. After all the random events of dice rolls, tile flipping, and opponent decisions, being victorious is an extremely satisfying feeling. This kind of efficiency mindset is so pervasive in the games that I play that it shows up in my real life as well. I walk my dogs every evening, and Bullet is a little leash aggressive every now and then, so we try to avoid other dogs. But what's the best way to do that? When I see another walker, do I follow behind them at 100 feet to guarantee I never run into them? Do I mentally log which house they live in so I know that if I go in the opposite direction, I can guarantee I won't see them again based on their pathing? I make a game of it. I could share similar stories about chores, cooking, and even watching movies. I want to squeeze the juice that is life out of every situation, a min-maxing lifestyle. So, what does that framework look like when applied to something that advertises itself as a game? If I'm clearly comfortable applying this thinking to non-game things, you'd think I'd be in the clear for a role-playing game. What's the objective of a game like D&D? From an outside perspective, it seems like it's to roll through a dungeon, kill all the monsters, get the awesome loot inside, and some XP for the attempt. This kind of gameplay loop is incredibly common in many different types of games, so it makes sense. In fact, it's a little crazy how much killing goes on in all games. Miniature war games are essentially simulations of war, battles, small skirmishes, and everything in between. You can dress it up as treasure hunting, territory battles, or whatever, but effectively you have to kill your opponent before they kill you. When I look at my history of game playing, it looks a lot like this. Every game, the objective boils down to murderizing your foes, whether it's a massive 4X game and there's politics and economy involved, or it's a classic arena shooter and the theme is much less blurred. By the way, I'm not here to make anyone feel guilty about that. I don't really think it has an adverse effect on people. At least I hope it doesn't, because I've been slaying a lot of the locals in Dune Awakening so I can harvest their corpses for my death stills. Bless the maker in his water. So, if the objective is dungeon crawling or something similar, I want to develop my character to be the best at doing that. I want to take the shortest path between where I'm at now and my goal, which doesn't just inform how I build my character and spend experience on future upgrades, but it also determines how I play my character, the meat of what an RPG is. All of my character's actions are spent on killing and making my killing more effective. Humorously enough, this kind of thinking is incredibly common in RPGs to the point where there's a term for a player who thinks like this: murder hobo. There's an NPC outside planting turnips? Slay them! All right, pause. I have about 2 hours until my next RPG session, and I haven't prepared for it, so I need to do some work. My players are about to go on something of a spiritual journey, but not together, more as individuals. And this poses something of an interesting challenge for role-playing games specifically, which are largely cooperative. Also, there are 5 of them, and if they're all waiting around while one person goes on their vision quest one after the other, that might get a little bit boring. I need to think about this. Back to the video. By the way, if you're interested in the minis that I've been painting in this video, they're a collaboration between myself, Skullforge Studios, and Humble Bundle, and you can get them right now linked in the description. For an amount of money that you get to pick, you get access to so many amazing sci-fi minis that are appropriate for the world of so many stories. They can be NPCs, they can be players, and the best part is they can be just for painting. They're beautifully sculpted models that are not over detailed and allow the painter to have creative ownership over the model. You can support me, Skullforge, and also a charity at the same time while picking up some amazing STLs for a wildly discounted price. Again, I'll link it below. So, what happens when you act like a murder hobo in every RPG killing the turnip farmer? They break down. Large RPGs like D&D, Pathfinder, Force and Destiny by Fantasy Flight, or Dune Adventures in the Imperium by Modiphius do not have tight rule sets. They're trying to represent a world, which is a massive undertaking. Obviously, combat is a big part of that, but so is love, arguing, experiencing fear, suffocating from poisonous gas, and a lot of what normal life entails. What, you guys have never suffocated from poisonous gas before? You're missing out. When your objective for game design is so grand, the rules start to sprawl, and when that happens, things fall between the cracks. Items that are obviously better than others in a mechanical sense, actions your player can take that's obviously more effective than others. Earlier, I said that the point of games for me is to find the shortest path to victory. But if you break it down even further, it's really to have fun. Having fun in the context of games is defined by Ralph Koster in his book, The Theory of Fun, as coming from challenges that are always at the margin of our ability. Obviously, it's hard to make a science of this stuff, but I largely agree with that statement. I don't want to get crushed, and I don't want to crush someone else. I want there to be a sufficient challenge and to come out on top. At first glance, this definition might seem a little incompatible given what I just said about RPGs breaking down when you treat them like combat simulations. But that's just it. That's the wrong way to treat them. That's not the challenge you're after. So what is? Ultimately, your goal as a player in an RPG is to live out the life of someone who's not you, but interesting to you, in a world that's not your own, but one that maybe you'd like to exist in for any number of reasons. Does ripping out Hitler's throat playing as an Allied Forces vampire spec ops unit sound like a world you want to test drive? Maybe Eat the Reich is right for you. So, we're representing another person's life, the choices they make, and the experiences they have. When you think of your own life, is it as linear as the choices in Catan or Call of Duty? Obviously not. Life has an abundance of complications, and so should your RPGs. You, as an individual, make mistakes and have shortcomings, and the character you're portraying should as well. As a min-maxing gamer, that can be super confusing. Why would I intentionally make mistakes with my character? Well, not only does this allow for more effective storytelling, a huge element of RPGs, but it also makes the games themselves more challenging and thus fun. Hi, me again. I think I've figured it out. I'm gonna have each player go on a choose your own adventure. I'll give them a prompt on a piece of paper that has a scenario and 2 morally challenging options based on how they set up their character. Depending on what option they pick, they'll get different future outcomes. The scenarios are gonna be private, but the answers they pick will be read out loud, which allows the other players at the table to have a fragmented idea of what's going on in each individual journey. This way they can also do it in parallel, saving time. By the way, I spent 1 hour coming up with one player's options, and I have 4 more to go, and I have 1 hour. Wish me luck. In miniature wargaming circles, a rulebook is viewed like a Bible. Sometimes when a game has concluded, if a rule was interpreted wrong during play and is discovered after the fact, it can feel like it spoils the outcome of the game. Gamers view rules as law, and they kind of are. At the end of the day, though, they're just written by another person. Another flawed geek like you or me, and that person may have a better understanding of their game as a whole, but they don't understand how you experience it at your table with your friends. While viewing a rulebook as all governing in a board game or a miniature war game might make sense, doing that for an RPG makes a lot less sense. The onus for creating a balanced and interesting experience is not between 2 hardcovers. It's on everyone at the table. This is the challenge. This was a mindset shift for me. No longer am I operating wholly within someone else's mechanical world, but I and my fellow players are responsible for our own enjoyment, and when that clicked, everything made sense, and I could enjoy role-playing to its fullest. With that fundamental understanding forming the foundation of my future experiences, I dove headfirst into RPGs. I've been playing Force and Destiny, a Star Wars RPG, for the last 1.5 years, and I am loving it. As a game master, I have even more control of the experience, so when I can tell that a player is overusing something, I can throw a complication their way to make them adapt and solve problems. That kind of freedom isn't as obvious in other games. I get to experience the world of Star Wars in a whole new way, a franchise that I love, and you can too. Like I said earlier, there are so many RPG products that you can easily find something in a world that you love, which makes the experience even better. You get to create stories in the universe that you enjoy, like Warhammer 40k or Alien or Dune, and enjoy that universe with your friends. By the way, the spiritual journey that I was preparing for that session earlier was my players going on their journey to find kyber crystals for their future lightsabers.
It's a nice lightsaber, you're very nice.
Ooh, yeah. That problem solving of figuring out a good solution for this Jedi vision quest is one example of what makes RPGs so extremely satisfying. You are put in the creative driver's seat far more than any game I've ever played, and it's so enjoyable. I want to spend some amount of this video talking about caveats. Earlier I said RPGs break down when treated like combat simulations, but as I understand it, some of the earliest versions of D&D were exactly that, and I bet there are other more modern interpretations that try to do that and do a very good job. I'm more focusing on what I think is the most typical experience for role-playing games, but this demonstrates something cool about them. RPGs are the experience that you make them, which comes down to selecting the right system for you and your friends. I also said that RPGs have a large, sprawling rule set, but many of them do not. Often they're very little guidebooks and you have to interpret a lot. One of the funniest ones that I own is an RPG that represents the state fair where I live in Minnesota. You and your fellow fairgoers are all classic Midwestern tropes, and your goal is to steal the butter sculpture representing Princess K of the Milky Way, the winner of a cholesterol-fueled beauty pageant of sorts. This rulebook is like 10 pages long, and it's different from what you might expect of a typical role-playing experience, reinforcing that RPGs can appeal to so many different people. Being a player also isn't the only experience on offer with an RPG, it's just the majority one. Being a game master is also an option, and honestly the one that I prefer. Personally, I now love playing RPGs. The issue of acting has all but faded away. When you truly engage with a character and a setting, choices naturally fall into place. It takes practice, of course, but if everyone commits to the idea of creating an interesting and balanced experience, it's not as challenging as you think. There's so much more to say about RPGs, but I think we'll keep it focused for now. They've impacted my gaming life for the good. When I'm playing video games, I focus on the narrative of what's happening and less on min-maxing my decisions. I care less about winning and more about the story that's being formed through the playing of games. I think I'm also a better opponent for that reason too. Don't get me wrong, I can still be a sweaty gamer when a situation calls for it, but I can also turn it off. I view rulebooks less like Bibles and focus more on the experience of joy and fun at the table. I'm not saying these realizations happen for everyone, but it's happening naturally for me. All of this because I gave RPGs the time of day, and I think you should too. Undoubtedly, a lot of what I discussed in this video is very obvious to veterans, but hopefully this video reached someone like mid-20s Scott, someone who is on the outside looking in, wondering what the deal is, or who has tried role-playing games once before and didn't have a great experience. I want to enjoy more of what life has to offer, and role-playing is a part of that, and I hope it can be for you too. That's going to do it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed this kind of more video essay style, I have a few others in this same vein that I'll link at the end of this video. If you like my channel and you want to support it, again, don't forget to check out that Humble Bundle link down in the description below. But if that's not your thing, there are many other ways to support me, namely checking out Miniac.co, my web store, where I'll sell things like miniatures, like wood elves and vampires, both in smaller scales appropriate for role-playing, and also larger display models for the joy and love of painting. I also make very thorough miniature painting courses for those display models that are multiple hours long and go over tons of detail beyond just how to paint the figure that you can buy with the models at a discount. You can also find me on Patreon, which gets you access to my Discord server, and you can also get access to my videos earlier than typical YouTube crowd. There are more options to support Miniac, link below if you want to check them out. I really appreciate that. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to...